So with that, I'll with Marianne's note there, we actually might as well, since it's 7:04, we might as well jump into this. This is not the first meeting that Marianne and I have been the only board members on. I'll state that, but I've stated that before the call to order for the meeting, so it doesn't need to necessarily go into the notes, though. Again, this video is being recorded. So we're going to start off with review and approval of the March 23rd, 2023 meeting minutes. There's some formalities, gang. Thank you again. Thank you for your patience with all this. There's some formalities that we go through. We follow Robert's rules of order for the most part with most of what we do here. Marianne, would you could you motion to approve the minutes, and I'll second it?
Yes, I will motion for my own notes to be approved.
Perfect, and I will approve them. We only need 2 people to do that. What we've been doing for the past 3 or 4 meetings, maybe even 5 meetings, is we've been starting these off with a public forum. That allows, there's a pragmatic reason for that. It allows anybody who's joining us from the public to say what they want to say without having to wait through all the business at hand. So it's like, imagine going to a town meeting and you've got this one thing that you want to get off your chest, and you've got to wait through somebody approving more trash barrels and somebody in this, somebody in that. So we start off this session with a public forum, basically an open mic. It's not the only kind of ad hoc or free flowing part of the meeting, but we start off with it, and we've got another place for other business at the end. Since there aren't any other members of the public, you all represent obviously members of the public, but we've got you an agenda item on here for you. I think we can move forward to the second agenda item, which is the grant application process. So we're in the middle of, or we're at the start of, I guess what you would call, and what I'm terming in fact in a deck, in a little presentation that I've got for later on, it's grant writing season. It's like the first wave of that stuff is happening. We're getting barraged and copied 4 times on a lot of the same things that are grant writing adjacent, and there's some degree of help that's been offered up to us by Local Motion, as well as some other people. Marianne, you noted this for your list this week. Anything you want to say to this, because I know it's going to dovetail with some of our initiative stuff that I've got later on in the night.
Susan Grasso had given us a couple heads up that grants are coming up, and there was one preliminary item that she mentioned that would be good to apply for or to submit prior to even applying for a grant. Where does that fall under our purview? So,
as has been explained to me, and this happened, I think it's somewhere around a year ago when it was first explained, because it came up last year. Grants have to be applied for by the select board, by the town. Our role in it, I would see, if I had to answer the second part of your question, I would say our role in it is, hi Dustin, is similar to our role in general, which is to advise the, I think somebody's got their mic on, it's feeding back a little bit. Okay, thank you. Which is to give advisory to the select board and say, hey, look, we think this is something we want to be in on. We've got an idea for it. And I hate the term shovel ready because it doesn't apply to what we're doing, but it is that kind of thing. Can we create things that that we can tie up with a bow and hand to the select board and say, here, we think this would be a slam dunk. Somebody's offering money, could pay for this. And what Ian told me was the select board itself, the town itself, has to apply for the grants. There was a point in time where we thought, oh, this will be great. We'll just go and apply for these things.
Right.
The majority of grants that have been put in front of us or we've been apprised of come from that. There are grants out there that you can apply for as private organizations, like the gang. Everybody who, I know a lot of people don't live in Bristol. We have a pump track here that was built on private property, which is the rec field, which the town rec fields are not owned by the town. And it was paid for with a grant. And I know the people who did that were able to do it because it was private on top of private on top of private. But since what our purview is the town lanes and highways and byways and things like that, Marianne, I believe, and we can go back to Ian with this just to confirm, the town is the ultimate ones to apply for the grants.
So when we haven't gotten on an agenda item, right, to present our quarterly information to them, how, if we haven't done that, then how can we push this forward with, when grants are so timely?
So agenda item number 5 tonight is the quarterly initiatives. I've got 3 that I'd like to run by everybody. And I think I picked at least 2 of them. I believe we could move very quickly on putting together a package for the select board. I want to speak to an agenda item that didn't make it onto the agenda because I hoped I would have had something good to say about it, though. I have continued to, I sent another note earlier this week about getting in front of the board with the 2 leftover agenda items from last year, the Pine Street traffic calming proposal, as well as the mission statement thing. Didn't get any response again early this week, so I'm going to hit Ian up and ask him. I reached out to the exact people that I was told to reach out to. I've checked in ad nauseum my emails to see if I got anything over the last 3 months, and I didn't. So I sent them a note again this earlier this week, probably the same day you had sent your note to me about one of those things being an agenda item.
Yeah.
I'll get with Ian and find out what we have to do to get in there. But we'll, on agenda item 5 actually covers some ideas for that, for the grant thing. That said, please pick up with the Susan Grasso thing if you want to here.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's see, is there anything else that we want to discuss about the grants right now? All right, so agenda item number 4, Dustin, I had already introduced the gang here. You'll note that we've got a lot of new faces on the call tonight. This group, and Madison, I know Finn, you've emailed me a few times. Do you have like a formal name you want to be called as a group, so that we can, rather than call you out every single time individually as names, is there a name you want to call? Because Dustin, this is the group from Middlebury College who's been doing work on the infrastructure audit.
Okay, thank you. Welcome. It's good to see some new faces.
Yeah, we never did team names. We should have. Sorry, Dustin. I think.
Oh yeah, we're still getting feedback. I think. Thank you.
Thanks. But yeah, so I'm from Regional Planning Commission office, but these 4 lovely people are from the Middlebury. What is the title of your program? The Community Partner something. There's a bigger title than I have the brain capacity for. But anyway, I've been calling you the Middlebury team to everybody I talk to, but we should have come up with a fun name. Next time I will do that.
Yeah, the name of the class is the Community Engaged Practicum, but I think Middlebury team works fine for this meeting.
All right. So I'm gonna let you all talk about what you want to talk about and present to the group and take it away.
Cool. I'm gonna share my screen real fast. Could you possibly give me screen sharing access?
Oh dear. Okay.
I think if you click on the 3 dots next to my photo, you can make me a co-host of the meeting, and that'll work.
The challenge is, Joseph, that I don't have control. I can get control if I completely log out of not only the meeting but of Zoom and relog in. I have login credentials for the town, but I was hoping I can do that. I can do that. Let me jump out, talk amongst yourselves for a minute, and then I'll be back on shortly.
What should we talk about?
Maybe could you all start with a couple of the more basic questions that you wanted to ask towards the end?
We could also do introductions.
That helps.
Yeah, maybe that's a good place to start.
Yeah, well, but Chris might want to hear who you are as well. Madison, what does ACRPC mean?
The Addison County Regional Planning Commission.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So we're based in Middlebury, but we serve most of the towns in Addison County, everybody but 2. So yeah, we are kind of the central coordinator for grants and town support and things like that. So we have a transportation planner on staff. I'm kind of helping him with bike ped specific things. So it's great to
Oh,
visit with
great.
you all.
Okay. Nice.
Joseph, you're all set now.
All right, perfect. All right, let's see here. Share. And then I'll put that into. You guys all see the start of that PowerPoint?
Yes.
All right, perfect. You want to take it away? Should
Yeah,
we do introductions to begin, I guess?
yeah, awesome. So we are a group from Middlebury College. We're in a class called Community Engagement Practicum, and we have taken on the project to create a bike and ped kind of initiative that's tying together transportation access and health and equity. And you can go on the next slide. Yeah, so we're Middlebury. We're working with ACRPC, which is the organization that Maddie comes from. And next. And so I think the focus of our group is on health and equity. So transportation clearly has a close link with health and equity. And we are creating a toolkit for any town to identify community needs for sidewalk projects, prioritize sidewalk projects that requires the most attention. And so Chris and Valerie has been really, really helpful and really nice by inviting us to get to know Bristol a little bit and inviting us to help you guys with this sidewalk inquiry that we have chosen to take on. Yeah. And yeah, next. So after briefly talking with Chris and Valerie a few weeks back, they mentioned something that would be really, really helpful for Bristol would be kind of a sidewalk inventory that maps out the conditions of all the sidewalks in Bristol. So that's what we have completed, and I'll let Justin to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so in order to develop a methodology to assess the infrastructure in Bristol, we first connected with the Walk and Bike Committee and the Bristol Town Administrator in order to understand and identify their needs. And they thought that the most useful thing that we could do was to provide a sidewalk inventory for prioritizing sidewalk projects and submitting funding. So in order to create this inventory, segments of 5 sidewalk slabs were assessed across the 6.2 miles of sidewalk in Bristol. And this was done using an app developed at ArcGIS Pro, which is accessed through Survey 123. So with the help of some wonderful volunteers, we walked around Bristol across every single stretch of sidewalk and used this app to assess the sidewalks according to 6 criteria, which are sidewalk width, drainage issues, weathering and material, vertical displacement, segment cracking, and edge and joint deterioration. So this app basically acts as a survey, allowing the user to assign a rating of none, low, moderate, or severe for each of these criteria. And a GPS point and a photo of the 5 slab segment, as you can see on the right here, is included with each entry in the app to track the user's location.
Yeah, so to get a little more in depth on those criteria, because later there'll be maps showing each of them. In terms of sidewalk width, the ideal sidewalk width is 5 feet. And this includes any obstructions that might be in the way. So if like a tree is protruding into the sidewalk and that makes it less than 5 feet, that's something that we would note. And a lot of sidewalks, though, to begin with, are closer to 4 feet. So that's one criteria we were looking at. Next slide. Drainage was another issue that we would note. So here is a great example of evidence of a drainage issue, like when sediment is collecting. And we would determine that drainage was a severe issue if it was a problem on over 50% of the 5 slab segment. Next slide. Weathering as our next criteria. On the left, you see a picture of a fairly good slab, a normal slab, and then on the right, you see severe weathering happening because of those potholes that are in the middle. But then also you can see individual stones within the surface, and that means that spalling has occurred. So we're seeing both moderate and severe weathering on that one, but we're basically measuring the erosion of the surface over time. Next slide. Vertical displacement, this was a big one, and this is important for, you know, the walkability or rollability of a sidewalk. And we're basically measuring how much 2 slabs are offset against each other, and if it's over 3/4 of an inch, then that's considered a severe problem. And that's pictured on the left, and on the right, a common cause is tree roots going underneath and displacing them, causing edging or ledging rather. Criteria for cracking. So cracks are any fissures that are occurring within the slab itself. And if they're over 1/4 inch in width, that's an issue. And also if they are creating individual patches, as you can see on the right picture, then that's considered a severe issue. Next slide. And then edge or joint deterioration is when that deterioration is occurring between 2 slabs or on the side of a slab, and if it's protruding more than 2 inches into the slab itself, then that's considered a severe issue.
So over the course of surveying all the sidewalks in Bristol, we were able to gather several hundred data points, and we've summarized them here according to each of the criteria we assessed. So this is just a pie chart displaying, you know, the percentage of sidewalk slabs that had issues with drainage ranging from none to severe issues. Another pie chart displaying the same for cracking, for ledging, for edge deterioration, and for weathering. But obviously these pie charts don't really give us a great idea of what actually is going on in Bristol as a whole. And so using a data analysis software called R, we were able to construct these interactive maps, which displayed all of these same issues, but actually put each point of data we collected as on the map as a point to display that a little bit better. So this is the map for drainage issues. And so if we zoom in here a little bit, you can see sort of how it works. So each of these little dots is a spot where we stopped, collected data for a 5-segment slab. And down here, if you look at the key, we've got ranging from none to severe issues. So just as an example, you can see the south side of Church Street has some pretty severe drainage issues for a long stretch going along here on that sidewalk. The next map is a similar sort of thing, displaying issues with cracking. Again, if we zoom in, we can see that we've got an issue segment here on Church Street, but then say sort of next to the Village Green, this sidewalk seems pretty good. It's got all that gray area there. We've got, again, same sort of idea for ledging. And then the same sort of thing for edge deterioration. And then finally, we've got it for weathering, a little bit different color scheme here. But just because weathering only has 3 different categories: light weathering, moderate weathering, and severe weathering. But you can see sort of same idea for all those first 5 maps, just sort of displaying issues with regards to individual criteria. The next map is a little bit different. It is a display of all of the different criteria we assessed. But for this map, we're only showing points that assessed that showed a severe issue for a given criteria. So, I can select which one I want to view right here. And then, so these are all data points where there was a severe drainage issue. So if we remember back to that first map we looked at, when we saw the issue on Church Street, now we're looking and we're seeing, okay, we do have a string of severe issues right along here, but next to the town green, there's not really much going on with drainage. And we can do the same for all these criteria. So for cracking, for edge deterioration, for ledging, we can display multiple at a time, which is useful if you want to see where things kind of overlap. And then we also have this aggregate quality data point, which was us basically taking all of the issues we found and assigning each criteria a weight depending on how important we thought it was. So ledging was weighted higher on this scale than, say, a drainage issue. And so then based on that, we can see sort of what spots display the most severe issues over the full range of these 5 criteria. And then our last map is a similar idea to that aggregate quality variable. It is displaying points that have either 2 or more severe issues, so 2 or more criteria had a severe issue, or if we select 3 or more criteria had a severe issue. So this really lets us see, okay, this segment along Church Street has a lot of severe issues and a lot of the criteria right here. But we can also see that, certain segments don't really have that. Again, all these maps were created in R, which is just a data analysis software. I can provide access to the code for these maps, but also just to sort of the backend data and a public link that anybody can come and view these maps as they want to, if you feel that would be useful. And so with that, I'll go back to our presentation, wherever that went.
Yeah, so lastly, we have presented what we have done and what we have found in our kind of sidewalk audit, and we have a few questions about your experience. Do you think your experience align with what is showing in the map? Are there any problem areas that we missed? Do you have any issues with our like criteria that we're choosing? Are we neglecting something? Yeah, so just tell us what you think or have any questions.
First of all, thank you. Thank you is probably too small of a term to show our gratitude and the town's gratitude as a whole for the level of data and detail that your study has yielded. Joseph, quick technical question I'll ask you, since you're the one that mentioned it. Is our browser-based software, when you mentioned that anybody could access it, you don't need software installed on a client, so it's installed on a machine, or how would people access the data?
So R is a data analysis software that is a desktop application. So all of those maps were built using JavaScript computer language, sort of on my end, but I am able to upload all those maps and also all the code for anybody who wants to see that as an HTML document to the internet, and then provide a public link so that anybody would be able to view and interact with those.
Okay, maps. Amazing, perfect. Marianne and Dustin, one of probably the primary use case for the work that the Middlebury team has done is going to be Valerie using it. She had already had a sidewalk audit on a list of things that she needs to get done. She does that there's a regular cadence that they do that on, and her main purpose for that is so she can figure out what to put out to bid for fixing, I think on a yearly basis or something. They like to know, okay, are we dealing with that weird section on Maple or whatever? And so she's going to use this data to hone in on whatever she's going to put out to bid. She'll probably go in and use this and say, okay, what are as Joseph started to get to the tail end, he was talking about highlighting some of these areas where there were the worst problems.
Mhm.
I'd assume Valerie's going to start with things like that, maps like that, and she's going to be able to say, okay, here, I suggest that we go out and put this out to bid. From our end, I'll actually stop talking for a minute and have Dustin and Marianne pick up with answers to a couple of your questions there. I have my own takes on that, but I'd love to hear. I think it'd be great to hear Dustin and Marianne and what they have to say about things like, does this align? Did you miss anything? Things of that nature.
Well, first of all, congratulations on doing such an excellent and thorough job. That's it. I really commend Middlebury College for getting you involved in this project and getting you off campus, which I think is unusual to see here in Bristol. What I was wondering is, had you thought about how school kids interact with the town sidewalk? Because we do have a lot of bicyclists who come and go from within the village. And in your survey, have you seen how people interact using the sidewalks?
So the assessment we didn't really assess user interaction with the sidewalk. We are planning to come to Bristol, I believe, not this weekend, but the following weekend. Is that correct? To do sort of more of a Bristol community interactive engagement type of thing. We plan to bring maps so people can come talk to us, tell us what issues they think are pertinent to the community, and then also mark problem areas on the map. So that's sort of our plan for getting that piece of it done, because we recognize that, objectively, these are the issues we see, but people may have other feelings or other needs that they want addressed.
Right.
Oh, I think it's great. And that, thank you all for the work you did. That's going to be really helpful information, I imagine, for our town when they're looking at where projects need to be done and getting bids and whatnot. I guess the pieces of information I'd also like to see with it is just possibly a study of like where the foot traffic is in the town and where there maybe aren't sidewalks, where there is a good amount of foot traffic. Because I know there's spots in towns where there aren't sidewalks, but there's a lot of foot traffic, and of course students living in the village don't have busing to the elementary school. They've got to walk or bike themselves there. So if there could be like a similar, I love the map and like the software and how it displays it. It's great. Something similar like that showed like sort of a study of how much vehicle traffic, how much pedestrian traffic there actually is, and where there maybe sidewalks don't even exist currently, but there's a good amount of foot traffic where, particularly in areas where students would be walking to school and don't have busing.
Yeah.
I guess that's.
I think when we go
next weekend.
Dustin, would you mind muting?
Oh yeah.
I think when we go to town next weekend, we could totally put up like a map wherever we're set up and have residents, even parents, maybe map like their kids' most commonly used path, and just have people come and just like draw on the physical map where they mostly use the road, sidewalks, or where we might need a sidewalk. And yeah, something similar was done in Middlebury, and I know it was very effective. So that's something that we could totally get done when we come to town next week.
Will you be announcing ahead of time that you are going to be seeking public input?
I think that's also something that we'd love your suggestions or advice on. Currently, our thoughts are very preliminary. We're thinking about printing out several big maps of Bristol and then setting up a few stations, like maybe 2 or 3 in different spots in Bristol, and then just catching kind of pedestrian traffic and see kind of where they travel the most and what are their thoughts and stories with the sidewalks and bike infrastructures. But then also like we'd love to have some, volunteers or some people who know about this and wants to talk to us, and some avenues for like talking to people that were doing this. And also recommended spots, like where do you think would be a good place to catch like representative crowds?
So
Sure.
we actually have a little bit of a running start on both aspects of this. One of them is slightly less, well, it's not perfect, but we do have data that was captured month by month over, say, 5 or 6 months of pedestrian traffic to BES on what was called the Bike Walk and Roll to School days. We have, and in fact, we have data that cuts across all modes of travel, from bus to car to walking to biking. And it's not perfect data for any number of reasons. One, it's unidirectional. It's only in the morning. Two, it's only for BES. It does not include Mount Abe. Three, it doesn't capture every single kid in the school and what they did on that day. Part of that, though, is that as you get up into the 5th and 6th grades, those kids are not interested in checking their name, or they're checking their box off on whether they bike walked or rolled to school that day. That said, we do have some data on what the split is of kids who can walk and roll to school versus those who are taking the bus. So we've got, it's preliminary, but it is what it is. As far as the trouble spots, we know that oddly the trouble spots are the 2 places in town that don't have sidewalks. One of those is Pine Street, which Middlebury Gang and Madison was part of the original charter of our group, was to figure out how to do traffic calming and make a safer street out of Pine Street. And the other is the north end of Mountain Street as it tails down through Devonau Lane to North Street. That is, both of those places are highly trafficked, not just with kids going to and from the schools. Pine Street especially is a pretty highly trafficked one for kids who are heading over to Mount Abe, to and from Mount Abe. And it's also highly trafficked by cars that are doing the same, unfortunately. Mountain Street, the end of the north end of Mountain Street as well. And in addition to the other amount of traffic, foot traffic and bike traffic on Pine Street, it's part of what's called the Big Loop. It's part of the one of the established walking and jogging paths around the village. So we have had people who are representing people who live on Pine Street, as well as people who live on Mountain, come to us multiple times over the past year and saying, what's going on with the Pine Street thing? Hey, when you're done with figuring out how to make Pine Street safer, you need to jump over to Mountain Street. So I think if you were on weekends, it's going to be a little bit of a different data set because you're not going to have foot traffic for schools, but there are we could send you to 2 places and say, hey, if you want to look at how many people are using 2 areas where we know are trouble spots, these are the 2 places I would focus on, rather than places that are well marked, that have sidewalks at least on one side of the street, have crosswalks, and already at least a nominal infrastructure there for safe passage by non-motorized vehicles. I do have one thing. I had slid in a request via Madison, and I think some of you were also on the call, about when you were doing the audit, if you could keep an eye on if you had seen any bike racks anywhere. Did you capture any of that data by any chance? If not, no big deal, but I figured I'd ask.
We did not.
Okay.
But I was just going to prompt folks, and I can just take it since it just occurred to me, but to talk about how we might envision kind of the next iteration of an audit like this to look. So doing things like the quality of crosswalks and road cuts into the sidewalks and bike racks or street trees, or things like that, kind of layering that in now that we have kind of the base methodology to work with. But we didn't do bike racks, I'm sorry.
No problem. We've been doing kind of a running count of things, but your group would have added a level of authority to the seat of the pants kind of assessment that we had been doing. If to be honest, if you all don't mind staying on the call, through at least towards the tail end. We're going to actually talk about a couple things, Madison, I think that you just touched upon in what we're going to be hopefully proposing to the town to look at. And it might either, okay, we don't need to deal with that, or, oh, actually, wait, here's some, we could actually do something to support that. So I think that could be, depending on if there's any other questions or any other comments by the group or to the group, we could move on to that. Everybody cool with that? Okay, so agenda item number 4 is these quarterly initiatives. So everyone who's not part of the board, we had proposed as one of the running changes, or actually one of the new year changes to how we were going to operate and operationalize some of what we were doing, was that every quarter we wanted to put in front of the select board at least one initiative to consider. We're obviously now into quarter 2 here, but I've got a couple things that I'd like to share with everyone. 2 of which I think are like real good to go things, and one really isn't an initiative. It's something that's going to involve further study, and we've actually already talked about it here. So let me just pull this up. Okay, can everybody see that? Cool. So context for this, and one additional bit of context for everyone. We usually have on the call, or quite often we have on the call, one of the select board members, Ian, who is also kind of our guardian angel. He's the person who watches over us and gives us advice. He's one of the select board members. A lot of what we do is tap him in the calls to ask him for advice and things like that. He's not on the call this month, unfortunately. But that said, if he were here, he'd be giving running commentary on a lot of what we're about to talk here about. So context, we had previously discussed the idea of presenting select board with one initiative per quarter. As mentioned at the beginning of this call, grant season is upon us. There's any number of things that are obviously time boxed, but that have been put in front of us as far as opportunities to gain funding. Additionally, the ARPA process is winding down. I know the committee a couple weeks ago furnished its findings formally to the select board. Those findings are in the select board's hands to take to the next steps, which involve, okay, picking some of these things for further investigation, including figuring out the costing of some of those things. So the select board and for the Middlebury team, the ARPA funding is those giant block grants that the federal government gave to states and towns around the country coming out of COVID to boost things. Bristol got $1.2 or $1.5 million. I wouldn't call it fully discretionary funding, but they have a lot of leeway in what they do with that. The town was very active in helping to inform the ARPA committee that was set up. And so that committee then sent formal recommendations. That said, some of what we're doing obviously dovetails with a lot of what the ARPA committee was trying to do, which is obviously to strengthen and make the community healthier and better off. And so obviously our committee dovetails with that rather nicely. That said, some of these things, funding for them could come from the ARPA funds. So the first idea is this idea of the assisted crosswalks. We currently have 2 of these in town. These are the ones with the blinking crosswalks that you hit the button and it lights up. We have been given guidance by Ian, the select board member I had mentioned earlier. He was the person who shepherded the first installation of these through. He's got a ton of good kind of, I hate the term best practices, but he's got a lot of best practices knowledge around where and how to site these, and that you want to be careful not to oversaturate any given area with these, because then you'll get fatigue and you'll start to actually block out. Studies have shown that people end up blocking out the lights if there's too many of them in a community. So we've currently got 2 of these. We would love to see 2 more. So the idea here would be to present a plan for assisted crosswalks at 2 key intersections on one of the most highly traveled pedestrian routes in Bristol, which is starting at Mountain Road. It's the Spring Street to Pleasant to West Pleasant, ending at Liberty. This is the most highly trafficked pedestrian route in town because in the morning, one set of kids is going to BES on it and another set of kids is going to Mount Abe. In the afternoon, that flips. It's also highly trafficked because it's part of a lot of people's walking routes, especially lunchtime walking routes. And there's two areas there that cut across, there's intersections there that cut, and I'm obviously Marianne and Dustin know all this already, but there's two areas, intersections that are very highly trafficked by cars. One is at the North Street intersection, and the other is at the Liberty intersection. One of those is an X intersection, and the other is a T. The other is a tangential one. I would love to go to the select board and say, this is what we feel is we want to put these things there. We know that there's grants that could pay for it. Ian has told us what the money is. It's actually a nominal investment. It's not a crazy amount of money that it costs to put these things in. And we think two of these things located in those two spots would be of tremendous value. Second idea is traffic calming on Mountain. I mentioned this earlier as far as being a hotspot for you all to potentially look at. At the north end of Mountain, as Mountain kind of turns into, and I hope I get the streets right, it turns into Devon Lane and then goes on to North Street, the sidewalk ends. Not only does the sidewalk end, but the roads start to turn. If you're going north, it turns to the left. It turns to the left, then turns to the right and turns to the left again. This becomes a very challenging spot for pedestrians who are using those roads, who have to use the roads in those cases on their walks, because they've got nowhere to run. They've got a culvert on one side, they've got turns, they've got cars there's no lines on the road, there's no sidewalk to protect them. And the S turn is it's like a racetrack, and it's a downhill set of turns if you're going north, which means that cars are going to have a bias towards the apex of the turn rather than staying in a lane. It's a dangerous spot. People on Mountain have reached out to us and asked us to look into what can be done, if not an actual sidewalk. Is there shared lane markings that can happen there or something similar? So this one is more as an idea, is going to be something that is going to draft off of the work we've done for Pine Street, which we still have to get in front of the select board. But it's something that I think needs to come on the heels of that as soon as possible. So maybe not a Q2 thing, but it's important to mention it because for the Middlebury team, this is an area that needs, I think, a degree of objectivity put towards it. We've got plenty of subjective, anecdotal evidence, not just from the people who live there and walk there, but also all of us. Like, that's part of my walking route and jogging route. And it's the one part of the route besides Pine Street at large that is a little bit harrowing, especially when you're there and you're watching like people try to, and they're walking, pushing strollers is probably the most harrowing thing you can imagine, is somebody trying to push a stroller up that hill and somebody coming down it. And then the third one is the bike rack one. We've got, and I think this one is interesting because, and I mentioned this, Madison, I can't remember how many people were on the call that we originally had with Valerie. But when I heard about the equity and inclusion angle of your study, of the team's study, this one I thought fit really well into that. We've had some outreach from some people who live in the town at large versus in what's known as the Bristol Police District, which is otherwise known as the Village. And they've said, we visit the Village often with our bikes. It would be great if there was a place where we could, where we're going, whether it's at the rec fields or here or there or wherever, where we could safely lock our bikes up. So we want to look at some other areas around town and make sure that Bristol is covered with bike racks. There are, off the top of our head, let's just say for argument's sake, there's a dozen bike racks in the Village District. It'd be great to consider, where other opportune places for those would be, because they would greatly serve the needs of people, especially people who are in the town coming into the Village, as well as people who are from out of town. One of the things that we're doing is work with the Tri-Town group and the Tri-Town bicycle loop and things like that. And so we know more and more traffic, more and more bike traffic is going to be coming into town, and it'd be great to look at that. Another thing that we want to do, and this is exclusive of this is kind of goes in the other direction, but we have places like the watershed. There are places, there are recreational areas around town, certainly Bartlett Falls, some of the other riverside areas, that it would be great to have a bike rack at as well, so people don't feel like they have to chain their bike up to a tree or something like that. So this is for our group, Dustin and Marianne. I think this is an easy one that we can go to the select board and say, we want 6 more bike racks. Here's where they would be. Here's why we think these are good sites for them. And here's 2 or 3 options for cost. Here's a minimal cost option, a medium one, and then, I know there's the option for actual bike lockers in places, but I know that involves a bigger investment in infrastructure as far as the hardscaping and site work they have to do for that. Anyway, talked far too much on this call as it is. These are the 3 things, 2 of which I feel like we can clean up and go to the select board with inside of the next month or 2.
Perfect. Thank you so much. These are really great ideas. The do the bike racks all have to come from a certain government approved a source?
Great question. There is no standard for that. And we can look to our own examples in town here as evidence of that we have three at least different styles of bike racks on what we would consider Main Street alone, on East Street into West Street. But it is not something where we have a tremendous degree, even like to the point where like you can do artistic takes on these things. They can be abstract shapes and things like that. There is no, that we will not run into the challenges we ran into with, say, line painting, that there are suddenly US DOT considerations that override state as well as local ones.
Okay.
There's not that, but it's a fabulous question because there are other things that we'd have to mind in the world that we're living in with some of our work.
Okay.
Any other questions? Middlebury gang, I know I just kind of forced on you Mountain Street and Pine Street. They remain the 2 big areas that when anyone in the village speaks to the challenges that you were speaking to, trying to identify and solve for, they're the evergreen ones. Like I said, the Pine Street thing is in part why our group exists. And the Mountain Street thing is going to be an extension of that work once we can get some forward movement on it. I will not bore you with the trials and tribulations of what we ran into last year with a project that had been greenlit and budgeted for at the select board. Was when we were close to ready to present our plan for it, we were told to walk it way back, basically in scope. There were reasons for that. Some of which were, I think, Madison, I noticed you might have in an email chain been involved in it. It had to do with line painting and stuff like that. I can't recall, but the select board decided to peel back some of the momentum that we thought we had on Pine Street. That said, again, anything objective that you can give us that speaks to the whys of why some of these areas need addressing would be the most amazing gift to us for those 2 areas.
Yeah, and I'll just respond quickly. 2 things come to mind. First of all, if you have a list of bike rack locations that you are just keeping track of, and just want to develop a formal map that to kind of mirror things like Joseph has presented, that's pretty easy for us to do for you. So happy to help with that. The other thing is, has anybody done a traffic count on Mountain Street or a speed count?
There have been speed studies done on Mountain, but I'm not sure if those also captured traffic data at the same time. We do have we do have the ability to do that though with the police department. So we can get something like that moving. Chief Nason has been a good partner to us. He believes in the mission, anything to slow down traffic, anything to make the town itself safer, he's on board with. And he'd love for us to give a location and a bit of a goal so that he can plant, so that he can tie one of his little machines up to a sign on a street. So that's a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely. We can also provide that service if for whatever reason he's busy or your machine's not working, we can do that too.
What do you, Madison, what do you have for a device? Is it the same kind of thing? Is it like a speed camera based thing or what?
No, I think it's the tubes.
The lines?
On the road.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm not formally trained in that process, but Mike, our transportation planner, does it all the time. So if
Got
that's a request that we need to put in, happy to do that.
That actually might be a better route to go. We'll ask Ian about what needs to happen there as far as approvals for that, but that would get people talking. They'd be like, what's going on on Mountain? Or they could put in a stoplight or something like that, versus like, again, it goes back to the fatigue of seeing an assisted sidewalk. Is you see one of those things that says watch your speed or whatever, and that thing's gathering data. It's the people don't get that. That's why Chief Nason puts those out. It's not just to slow you down. It's that he's trying to figure out how fast people are going. So we've got some good data from Pine Street that actually changed our minds about a few things as far as what it had captured previously. But the thing that those two strip things might be a really interesting way of going about this.
Well, maybe it would be worth pairing, on the same days that you have something like that, also having volunteers out counting pedestrians, so that you can compare, we have really high speeds and really high pedestrian counts at the same time, during
That'd be
rush
interesting.
hour.
Yep.
Might be worth
Yep.
looking into, but yeah.
Yep. Okay. Anything else on this? I know we're
I got just one thing to share. I think at one point I said I had this idea to look at Strava data and heat maps to see where the foot traffic was for people that are Strava users tracking their runs and walks. And I do have that. I found it real quick here. I'm just going to share my screen real quick.
Dustin, you're muted. Still muted. Hold on, I might be able to unmute you.
Sorry about that. I can't seem to screen share and be unmuted at the same time.
I might be able to unmute.
I might be able to unmute you.
Okay, well, I'm going to go back to screen sharing and see if you can unmute me.
Unfortunately, I think I may need to run. I have a commitment that I have to make it to.
I have a commitment that I have to make it to.
Joseph, thank you so much.
Thanks, Joseph.
Joseph, thank you so much.
Can you all hear me now and see my screen share? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
For some reason, I can't see my own screen to show it now. Anyways, if you're looking at this map, you can see where the colors are kind of brighter. That's where there's more foot traffic. Where it's kind of darker red, there's foot traffic, but not as much. You can't see the street names, but it's pretty clear to see what's what. And you can see the most foot traffic is definitely along West Street, along North Street, along Pine Street, Liberty Street. And then the next most South Street has quite a lot, actually. You know, past the first, there's not a sidewalk on that. Mountain Street has a lot. Devon Lane has a lot. Quite a big road. And like the airport drive loop and the rest of it has to be the most interesting. A lot of the interior streets that have sidewalks don't have nearly as much foot traffic. So that's if that's useful, that data is out there, pretty easy to find. I think it's fairly accurate, just anecdotally living here, traveling the streets myself, watching where people are walking and running and stuff.
That's
we
great.
do have that.
That's great.
All right, I'm not sure where to, if somebody wants me to put that pic in a folder somewhere or share it, I guess I can email it to you, Chris.
Yeah, that would be great.
That would be great. Dustin,
did you need Strava Pro to get this or not?
Strava Pro to get this or not?
No, actually, I didn't even do that through my app. I just Google searched Strava heat maps, and I think I did log into my account, and then I just put Bristol, Vermont, and that came up, that global heat map.
Great, this is a great idea.
Great, this is a great idea.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's all I got.
Okay, can you unshare? You know, are you able to do that? Okay, great. Let's see. Hold on one second. I'm just, oh, perfect. Madison through the link in. That's great. Thank you. Okay, we're running into 8 o'clock now. I want to get through the last couple quick things. I know this has been amazing. This has been one of the, probably the most dense and rich meetings we've had in a long time. Quick notes on other business. I've got one thing, and then Dustin, Marianne, if you have anything else, throw it in. I have been in touch with one of the 2 potential board members that we're going to hopefully get in front of the select board. This person has been out of country for the last month, but they're coming back into the mix, and I checked with them earlier this week, and they're ready to roll. So I'm going to get that name and that person hopefully in front of Ian very shortly, so that to figure out the mechanics of how that goes down. The other person I reached out to earlier this week, haven't heard back from them yet, but as I think I mentioned on the last call, one of those people was a member of the ad hoc committee and showed interest. They had been tied up with other volunteer efforts that just freed up. And this other person that I've reached out to is highly engaged in the Bristol mountain biking projects that are happening out at New Leaf and in other areas around the town. And I thought it would be fabulous if we got someone from that part of the bike part of Bristol culture to jump in. So I'm hoping to hear back from them. But anyway, hopefully by this time next month, we will at least have one new board member in. That is all I have for other business. Does anybody else have anything else they want to talk about? All right. Again, Madison, Shui, Justin, Finn, thank you so much. Joseph, who's can't be with, who's gone, cannot thank you enough. The data here, I think, it's wild just to have an exact mileage count of the sidewalks in town. That's going to be something that we can underpin a lot of our conversations with the select board with moving forward. So just having just basic baseline data like that is great. I know Valerie, if you haven't presented it to her already, is going to be ecstatic to see the level of nuance and detail that you were able to capture for that. And also, just we're here to help you in whatever you need as far as things to go after and things like that, because it's just fabulous that you're engaged, and that I believe we're the first town that you're jumping in on with this whole thing. So can't thank you enough. And Madison, also for your guidance and we've been looking for liaisons like you in organizations that are doing similar things. So to have you as part of our gang is a huge step forward for us in what is now our second year of existence.
Yeah, I'm grateful that Bristol was willing to let us come in and do this. You know, we just by doing this project have spurred a huge conversation across the state about how we do sidewalk audits and how we allow towns to be able to update those audits and what kind of technology and what kind of methodology do we want to use. And so you know, you guys are kind of the guinea pigs. And so, you know, we're going to take that feedback that you've given us and hopefully take this to the next level and expand upon it in the future. So you'll probably see us come back around in a little bit to have a conversation again, but I'm excited with the great quality of work that these guys have put together. So.
Yeah, it's amazing. So we'll be active, far more active, I promise, in getting you anything formal that you need from us.
Including, I think, putting up on Front Porch Forum that they will be back in town seeking public comments. I think that's probably where people would be most engaged to learn that they have an opportunity to meet the students and talk with them, no matter where they're setting up.
Yeah.
Just as a quick last question for you all, I know we're over time. Would it be valuable if we had a Front Porch Forum like survey style link that people could fill out? Do you think the in-person is the more effective way to gather that kind of input? You know, has this already been done by your group or other groups? Is it unnecessary? Let us know, you know, if it's not worth our time.
I guess, sorry, go Marion, sorry.
Well, I know surveys have been posted on Front Porch Forum, but I don't know how effective they have been in terms of community engagement. That's something that we could find out from those who did post.
Yeah, my comment would be that it all comes to a survey, all comes down to what you're asking, the types of questions you're asking. You know, I don't want to say regardless of the amount of engagement you get. One of the things that's been interesting is, you know, we've had once or twice, you know, we're a group that advises the select board on things that are improving the health and well-being of bicyclists and pedestrians, walkers, runners, basically anything non-motorized in the town of Bristol. And so anything that I think you'd want to frame up, any conversation you'd want to have would want to be oriented around that versus something that had doorways into people saying, I think the speed limit should be higher on Pine Street. I think there's too many sidewalks in Bristol. And I'm saying that and it feels like I'm doing a bit, but they exist. We've had them on the Zoom here before, and they've taken interesting, in some cases, I don't want to say bad faith, but there've been attempts to say you shouldn't put a stop sign here because that's going to lead to more greenhouse gas going from cars idling. And it's like, if that's your concern, then ride a bike. Don't, you know, because that's what our group is here to do, is to encourage, promote, and create an environment and an ecosystem and an infrastructure in the entirety of Bristol that's conducive to biking and to cycling, running, and walking. So I just say that as just when you figure out what you want to do for a survey, don't give like I would consider being very relatively, I don't want to say narrow, but controlled with it. And I think the same goes for outreach. I think the same goes for, like, we had a person, one of our board members who left, this guy Jerry, who was amazing, and he had this little stand set up, and he would go to town events and things like that and do outreach and like that. And my only concern during that whole thing was that somebody was going to come and basically bring that kind of car energy to Jerry, who's there being a firm believer in cycling and health and the environment and things like that. That was my only hesitation, was he was out there on the tip of the spear, and he was going to take the brunt of somebody saying, you know, like I said, cheap, you know, kind of cheekily, but I think there's too many sidewalks in Bristol. So anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Fair enough. Well, so maybe team and I will get together and think about what additional kind of survey work we might be able to do in the next couple of weeks, because they're wrapping up pretty quick. And then maybe come back to you all with what a draft or an outline of what we're thinking of, so that you can tell us if you think it'll be useful.
Yeah, I mean, if I think of like the best use of your time, it would be concentrating on a couple areas and just pedestrian and bicycling traffic. To Dustin's earlier point, like there's the routes to school that we know of, and there's the problem areas we know of. In certain cases, those are the same thing. So it would make, you could kill two birds with one stone as far as data collection is concerned. And it's that kind of objective stuff that we could use to further along conversations that are either ongoing right now or that we know we're going to be having.
Sure. Okay.
Can I ask a quick question? So the big theme of our classes as the community engaged practicum is community engagement. And so that's something we're interested as students in learning more about. And I was wondering if was it Jerry who was doing a lot of that work?
Yeah.
I think that was the name. Yeah. I was wondering if you have his contact information, because we love
can-
to just talk to people and what they found is successful. And then you also, I think in our previous meeting mentioned that your spouse was in charge of the really successful ARPA outreach.
Yeah, she was on the ARPA committee, but she was also the person that ran the bike, walk, and roll to school and the safe streets. She was the Bristol representative for the Safe Streets initiative. Finn, what I can do is we could give you at least a half a dozen names, including Jerry, including my wife, but also including people who have been very active in reaching out to us about things, whether it's Mountain Street, Pine Street, or otherwise. And some other people that I think would be, including maybe even some people from the ad hoc committee that birthed our group here. We can give you those people's names, because I think every time we talk with one of those people, it's like, this is who we're doing it for. Forget like our own little agendas and things like that. It's like when you hear from somebody on Pine Street that says, they're blowing through the stop signs, I'm scared to go outside of my lawn, things like that. It's like, oh yeah, this is a real thing we're doing. So I'd love to get you. We've got some people we can get you. We can connect you with for sure.
That'd be amazing. I'll follow up with an email. Yeah,
Great,
that
perfect.
contact information would be great. Thank you.
Perfect. You're welcome. Thank you for that's a great idea. Anything else from anyone tonight? Then the always fun, ask for a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
Dustin, can I get a second?
I second.
Perfect. Everyone, thank you for joining, making for one of the best meetings we've ever had. Again, for the millionth time, thank you for your efforts, and we will remain in touch.
Thank you for having
Thank
us.
you.
You're
Thanks.
welcome. Thanks,
so much.
everybody.
Welcome. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thank you, Middlebury team.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.